What's up, guys, and welcome, Daily Theologians. This video comes with an extreme warning. Danger. Your head may explode, number one. Number two, I may say something technically not the correct theological word, but you'll get the sense of what I'm saying if you stick around for the end. The problem of evil, where did it come from? Who's responsible? Is God responsible? Is God the author of evil? Or is man the author of evil? Was it Satan's fault? Is God's knowledge the problem? Maybe it's his power that's the problem. Or maybe it's none of those things at all. You're going to want to stick around and check this out. So first, just a warning, I will probably say something wrong. This is going to be a long video, and it's going to make people that think humanity is autonomous mad. It's going to make atheists mad. It's going to make everybody mad, except the Christians that say, I trust God's good character and will. So here's where we start, okay? Sin started in heaven.
I think the answer to why God allows evil in the world is in the Bible, and we can know it, and we can thoroughly embrace it, and we can enjoy it. And it's not one of the inadequate short answers, like, well, God's not responsible for evil, Adam and Eve are. That is a very short-sighted answer, because it only poses the question as to why God allowed Adam and Eve to be able to make that choice. Knowing they would, why did He create them with the ability to do that? And then why in the world did He put a talking snake in the garden, which did not create itself? So somebody says, well, God's not responsible, and Adam and Eve aren't responsible. Lucifer is responsible, which only poses the question as to why God, who created the angels with the capacity to rebel and fall, did so when He knew they would, and that Lucifer would become Satan. Which gets us back to where we need to be, to the realization that sin started in heaven.
So sin started in heaven. Now, before you throw your computer across the room, this is true. Satan led a rebellion in heaven, and the non-elect angels fell in heaven before we had ever joined the rebellion. So humanity is clearly brought into this rebellion. And so the question is, well, is the problem intrinsic in humanity where we will always fall? I think the answer, if you're being honest, is pretty clear on that question. I think it's the case that we would fall, except for one person who we'll get to. But there needs to be a reminder as we discuss this topic of theodicy. God is not the author of evil. You say, well, if He's all-powerful, knows all things, permits evil, and even perhaps decrees evil, then how can He not be responsible? Well, let me tell you why He's not responsible.
It needs to be a reminder here, Psalm 5:4. For thou art not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness, and no evil dwells with you. Evil exists. God exists. The God of the Bible exists, who is absolutely sovereign over everything. Therefore, God wills evil to exist without being evil. He is light, and in Him is no what? Darkness at all. God wills evil to exist. Now, at this point, panic strikes the heart of an Arminian. He becomes short of breath. His eyes roll back. There are accelerated heart rates and palpitations. His palms become sweaty. Because, like the theological liberals, he's got to rescue God from this horrible caricature. Do you know why there is Arminianism? Do you know why there is an unbiblical system of theology? It's the same reason there's liberalism. It's another rescue operation to try to deliver God from the bad press He gets from the Bible.
So he's right. This system of Arminianism and man's autonomy is invented to rescue God from the problem of evil, to rescue God from sending people to hell and not saving all people. But again, as we've covered thoroughly, chance is not a force. God knows where all people are. He seeks and saves and keeps his sheep. He'll save whom he will before the foundation of the world. This is actually a very straightforward question. The problem is we don't like the answer, that God wills evil, though is not the cause of evil, and permits evil, though is not the cause of evil, for his righteousness, his grace, and his glory in saving guilty, fallen rebels.
Now, the question is, why did God will it? And the answer is our last point. God willed it for his own glory. God willed it for his own glory. Listen to the Westminster Confession. God, from all eternity, did, by the most wise and holy counsel of his own will, freely and unchangeably ordain whatsoever comes to pass. Yet so, as thereby neither is God the author of sin, nor is violence offered to the will of the creatures, nor is the liberty or contingency of second-hand causes taken away. Sinfulness proceeds only from the creature and not from God, who, being most holy and righteous, neither can be the author and approver of sin. Went on to say, and all that God decrees and providentially brings to pass is all to the praise of his glory. They got a lot of things right, of course, and they got that exactly right. They got it exactly right. I want to show you. Now, that was the introduction. Here's my message.
So that's the point. Now, remember, there is mystery here that we cannot understand fully. And what you see in that answer is submission to God's goodness, trust in his promises, trust in his character, and a love for God. Because clearly, no human being, unless they are fully Pelagian or completely crazy, is going to think that humanity is good. We know that we are evil. We know that God is not. This is not a complicated question when you look at it at face value. And so people struggle with this because they're trying to get God off of the hook. So they invent a system that's not in the Bible. They reject the actual sovereignty of God, which is very plain in the Bible. And they reject the answer that the Bible gives, and they make up their own answer so that they can love that God. In fact, I've heard people say, I don't love that God. Well, maybe you don't love God at all. Maybe you actually hate God. So the bottom line here is this.
We would never understand the full glory of God's righteousness were we not so familiar with unrighteousness.
That's the bottom line. We would not understand God's holiness, his righteousness, his grace, if he did not permit or decree in some way evil. Now, he does that sinlessly, which we're going to cover. So stick around. There's still more here for us to talk through, but that is the bottom line. He predetermined what would happen.
The condemnation of these apostates was pre-written before history ever began, because God predetermined that he would ordain the existence of evil without ever being the cause of it, for the purpose of putting on display the majesty of his holiness. We wouldn't know God is as righteous as he is everlastingly and give him glory for it if it hadn't been for unrighteousness. We wouldn't know he's as loving as he is if it hadn't been for sin. We wouldn't know he's as holy as he is if it weren't for judgment.
You can say, I don't like it. You can say, it's not the way I would have done it. Well, who are you? You didn't make a thing. You didn't make yourself. You didn't save yourself. You have no ability here. We have no ability to point the finger at God, and nor should we. So this is a time when we need to go to the one and only, the most famous, perhaps, clip in internet history, R.C. Sproul.
This creature from the dirt defied the everlasting holy God. After that, God had said, the day that you shall eat of it, you shall surely die. And instead of dying thanatos that day, he lived another day and was clothed in his nakedness, by pure grace and had the consequences of a curse applied for quite some time. But the worst curse would come upon the one who seduced him, whose head would be crushed by the seed of the woman. And the punishment was too severe? What's wrong with you people? I'm serious. I mean, this is what's wrong with the Christian church today. We don't know who God is, and we don't know who we are. The question is, why wasn't it infinitely more severe? If we have any understanding of our sin and any understanding of who God is, that's the question.
The question, why could a loving God permit evil, decree evil, but not cause evil, and then expect us to be okay with him condemning people to hell for all eternity and saving whom he will for all eternity? Who are you? This is the problem. We think that our human intellect is somehow the ultimate supreme standard of right and wrong, when clearly, even through our own experience, we know our intellect, our will is actually 100% the problem. Which among us would say we're perfect? Which among us would say we keep the law perfectly? Who among us would say that we are morally good, upright, and perfect? We all, as Christians, intuitively understand this. And the atheist has a problem too, because he's going to accuse God of evil. Well, how can there be evil if there's no God? And how can you accuse a God that doesn't exist of evil? You don't even have an argument here. You're not in the conversation. You're just demonstrating that you have a conscience and you know there's a God. So it's the same problem. And so our intellect and our will is not the ultimate standard, but God is not evil. He never causes evil in the sense that he's creating the evil. He permits evil to work. He overrides evil, which we clearly see all in the Bible, throughout the Bible, the pages of the Bible. What you meant for evil, God meant it for good. I could go home now. John Piper. Romans 8:28, he causes all things to work together for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purposes. God is certainly sovereign over evil. There's a sense in which it's proper to say that evil is part of his eternal decree. He planned for it. It did not take him by surprise. It's not an interruption of his eternal plan. He declared the end from the beginning. He's working all things for his good pleasure. Isaiah 46:9-10. This is a God with which many people are unacquainted. This is a God that has no right to determine or decree evil, to permit evil. But if God wanted to get rid of evil, you think it would still be here? Would you still be here? If God got rid of all evil, we would be gone as well. And that's the point that people fail to recognize. He permits evil, he decrees evil, but he does not cause evil. And you know why we know that? Because he tells us that, and we trust him. We don't fully understand it, but it's pretty obvious the reason why he does it, for his glory. Check out the London Baptist Confession. From all eternity, God decreed everything that occurs without reference to anything outside himself. He did this by the perfectly wise and holy counsel of his own will, within the triune Godhead, and unchangeably. Yet God did this in such a way that he is neither the author of sin nor has fellowship with any in their sin. This decree does not violate the will of the creature or take away the free working or contingency of second causes. In other words, you make real choices. On the contrary, they are established by God's decree. In this decree, God's wisdom is displayed, directing all things, and his power, faithfulness, and demonstrated in accomplishing his decree. And then the verses are down there at the bottom for you. So you need to hold to a historic confession or creed because the questions you have been answered. They've been thought through. They've been basically worked through for thousands of years. And if you don't have a creed or confession you hold to, I strongly recommend the London Baptist 1689 because it's biblical and because we always want to highlight the gospel in these things. And where you see people not submitting to God's sovereignty, there's a reason. They want to be sovereign. The Bible clearly teaches that God is sovereign over all things, but is not the cause of evil. You say, well, that's a paradox. I can't get my head around it. Who cares what you can understand? That's where the bottom line comes to. Most positions, the Arminian position, it reduces God's power or his will. Like he doesn't want to enforce his will on other people and thus give them some sort of autonomy. Autonomy from who? Freedom from what? This is not the God of the Bible. They redefine God to create a God they can love, which is very scary to me because it sounds a lot like they don't love God at all. Now, I'm not saying they do or don't. I'm just saying there's something fundamentally wrong with someone that cannot say, I submit to you, God. I can see my own sin. I'm not pointing a finger at you for where evil came from. I recognize that I myself am the problem, and you alone have saved me by your sovereign good pleasure, by your grace, by your all-knowing, perfect, righteous life, your perfect subsequent atoning, hell-bearing death and resurrection. And I am rejoicing in what is true, what I can understand fully. And I may never understand the problem of evil to a level that others will find sufficient, but I find it sufficient. God says it, and that's the case for it. That's the answer for the problem of evil. You say, I don't like that. I don't like your answer to theodicy. Well, get in line. There's a long line of people that reject the God of the Bible. And perhaps that's you. Or perhaps it's not you, and perhaps you'll take a moment and hammer that like button. Like the 95 Theses, and leave a comment below. I know this is a heated issue. I know this is a contentious issue, but it's not a complicated issue in one sense. We can see God permits, decrees evil, but does not cause evil, is all good, loving, just, and patient, and has provided a way for us to be saved. Thanks for watching. Comment below and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, and God bless.